Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. The French issue, two terror attacks in less than a week, the president sticking to secularism and the freedom of expression, the extreme criticism, both personal and diplomatic, from fundamentalist countries, and protest from the Muslim world all over against France are making the news today. But look at the reality of the picture. Is a tasteless cartoon reason for killing somebody? Is the freedom of expression unlimited? Is the undiplomatic, uncouth, uncivilized, uncultured criticism by the three heads of the state, sorry, two heads present, one former, justified? Let me tell you, I stand with President Macron in declaring very clearly that the free speech includes a right to offend. After all, who is offended? And why should one be? Is a difference of opinion, and cartoon is an expression of difference of opinion, a reason to be offended about? And okay, if you're offended, you're welcome to protest peacefully, but you can't go and start killing the offenders. A teacher is assassinated by a Muslim fanatic by showing the class the controversial cartoons of Prophet Muhammad. I admire Muhammad, not because he was the founder of Islam, but he was a great reformer. In that tribal society at that time, 1400 years back, absolutely steeped in backwards, backwaters of civilization, he brought in a lot of order. Maybe his ideas might be outmoded today, but he was a revolutionary in his time, and his teachings are really revolutionary for that period and for that place. Now, let's be very clear. The same idea might not have been acceptable in a different society, but there it was pertinent and required. So, cartoon is made of him. Agreed. Would he himself have objected? He might have looked at them and laughed away. But here, if Muslim fanatic goes and kills a teacher, and when Macron condemned a murder and defended free speech, another fanatic travels from Tunisia and within 3 days of his arrival goes into a church and kills three people. Malaysian former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad claimed that Muslims have a right to be angry and kill millions of French people for the massacres of the past. Really? Does he also give Christians, Jews, and Hindus the right to kill millions of Muslims for the Muslims who had killed these people? In the hoary past, they had killed Hindus, they had killed Christians, they had killed Jews. Does that give them those people a right to kill the Muslims? No, it doesn't. So, what gives a right to a Muslim to kill the people belonging to these denominations? Do the non-Muslims kill Muslims because some ISIS idiots have killed innocent people in Syria and Iraq? I can understand Turkish President Erdogan being outraged, but he's outraged not by the murder, but by Macron's defense of free speech. He should have been outraged for the murder of the teacher and the three people in the church. He was not. So, what sort of outrage is it? That the killing of innocent people doesn't cause it, but the protest saying that because this is somebody's freedom outrages you. He called for a boycott of the French goods. And then this was echoed by various countries. And then Malaysia and formally decried the murders later on. And look at it in Pakistan, which harbors terrorists, which is a home of terrorism, which has been encouraging terrorist activities all over the world. And more than 90% of the people who are terrorists come from or are trained and nurtured in Pakistan. They are criticizing it, and Imran Khan says that he will talk to the people and there'll be a united Muslim front. What did you see? You remember it was in 2007 that Charlie Hebdo had been prosecuted by a Muslim organization that the cartoons of Prophet implied racism. The response was that the magazine specialized in satirical humor, not racism, and it opposed white racism as well as Catholics and Jews. So, and if you look at the cartoon of Muhammad, it said, 100 lashes if you don't die of laughter. Now, this is humor, not racism. And naturally, the magazine was acquitted. But its officer firebombed in 2011, again attacked in 2015 by two Muslim fanatics who killed 12 people. Charlie Hebdo did not change. Hats off. Now, many people would argue, including Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, that free speech does not extend to offensive speech. The point is, what is offensive? Every religion has strong belief in its own superiority. And this is automatically offensive to the people of other religions. Freedom to practice any religion implicitly accept the notion that the other religion is inferior. So it's offensive. So do we ban that? What is required is tolerance by the people who are offended. I fully agree that all freedoms are subject to reasonable curbs. If you deliberately incite violence, that should certainly be stopped. But not cartoons. I agree they might be tasteless. They might be absolutely unacceptable as far as their artistic capability is concerned. But then they imagine that Christianity views all those reject Christ as heathen, and they cannot go to heaven and will go to hell. This is the Christianity. So does that mean that they should start killing people or forcibly convert them because to save them or ensure that they go to heaven? This can offend non-Christians. Then how do they say that I say I'm a practicing Sikh or a Hindu or a Jew, so since I'm not a Christian, I'll go to hell? What nonsense! But does that justify by burning the Bible or killing Christians? The Quran and Hadiths led Muslim conquerors to convert by the sword and kill millions. This can offend others, and it did offend others, but that definitely just does not justify banning the Quran or the Hadith. Manu Samriti has been criticized time out of number for promoting, or rather, shutting an eye to the exploitation of women. It has actually been derogatory to the status of women and the untouchables. But do you justify banning or burning of the Manu Samriti? Hindu scriptures hold that the bad people, including those of other religions, will be reborn as animals, including dogs and pigs. This can offend non Hindus, Muslims especially, because pigs are dirty word for them. But does that justify banning the Hindu scriptures because they say if you are not honest and you are not good, then you will die and be born as a pig or a dog? People of different religions can coexist by tolerance, not by revenge, not by punishment. Let's be clear about that. I've often lambasted Muslim fanatics. I've lambasted Sikh fundamentalists in no uncertain terms. I have criticized Hindu fundamentalists. And the one reason for my criticism is that intolerance and violence are not acceptable. Absolutely not acceptable. Whatever the reason may be, you have no right to go and kill the innocent civilians who had no role to play at all. When Patty was the teacher who was killed, showing the cartoons, who knows what he was telling them? Was he saying that Muhammad is bad? Maybe he was saying, look at the artistic way it has been printed, and how stupid is this system? Maybe he was criticizing it. But simply because he was showing is not the reason for killing him. And even if he was critical of Muhammad, that's not a reason to kill somebody. Many Muslims have criticized Macron, but I'm really impressed by what Javed Akhtar, who organized a webinar for the secular democracy, said. We are here to condemn in unequivocal terms, no ifs and buts, not only the man responsible for this barbaric act, but for all those who had any role in justification and instigation of this crime, and all those who seek to justify it. This is a clear, explicit criticism of people like Erdogan, Imran Khan, or Mathar. And one thing I love about Javed Akhtar, and that should be a credo, he demanded the abolition of apostasy and banishing of the blasphemy from anywhere and everywhere across the world. After all, what's blasphemy? Well, he says that Christ was not born of Virgin Mary, so it's a blasphemy. I have been accused of blasphemy when I said Guru Arjan Dev, the fifth Guru of Sikhs, was not a martyr, he was just killed. Yes, killing was unjustified, but he was not a martyr. To call his death day a martyrdom day is a contradiction in terms. And I wrote an article, and can you believe how much abusive emails I received? But then that's a part of life. But nobody killed me, and nobody threatened to kill me. As a matter of fact, the ideal would be to abolish apostasy, abolish the very concept of blasphemy, and let people like Justin Trudeau wake up. This pussyfooting, this soft paddling of fundamentalism, of indirectly aiding and abetting terrorism, is going to be suicidal. So, what Javed Akhtar said should be listened to and actually implemented. I would very much like the Security Council to pass a resolution calling upon all the countries to pass laws banning blasphemy, the concept of blasphemy, and the concept of apostasy. One thing you have got to understand, all these people who call themselves religious people, and this is one basic truth you have got to understand. Every religious text and tradition is offensive. Every religious text is blasphemous, and it is heretical to the other sects and religions. So, blasphemy is in the eye of the beholder. As the beauty in the eye of the beholder, blasphemy is your thinking. Now, atheism is a religious belief which is no less than Islam or Hinduism, and as an atheist, I demand respect for my rights and my beliefs. And yet, this is widely missing. The biggest abuse in India they can give to anybody is that he is a atheist, Gnostic. Who has condemned the killing of the several atheists in Bangladesh by the Muslim fanatics? Were Erdogan, Imran Khan, Mathia, and others of the same ilk not alive at that time? In India, the three prominent atheists were killed. Why? They were killed by the Hindu fanatics. So why is the killing of these atheists not blasphemous? You see, you have got to define another thing in this connection, in this French connection, and that is the difference between a cartoon and a political caricature. The cartoon is ideally aimed at making the reader chuckle, while the political caricature demonizes an adversary, makes him appear hideous and offensive. I agree, in the modern stupid journalism, it's absolutely rotten. The difference between the two is not there. But if you remember, in India, there used to be a great cartoonist R. K. Lakshman. Gentle jabs, they corresponded to the mood of the time. His pocket cartoons were markedly different from the British stalwarts like Steve Bell, and Martin Rosen. They were brutal. Lakshman was very compassionate, but they were very telling. And then the practice of depicting somebody in a hideous way is not something new. During World War, Kaiser William II of Germany was always depicted through his mustache. Adolf Hitler was similarly depicted with his scowl and mustache. Winston Churchill was characterized by his cigar, and Japanese soldiers were invariably portrayed as buck-toothed with round glasses. Was that not offensive? It was. Did you start killing the British cartoonists for that? No. And they were found to be the Japanese, that they were inordinately fond of screaming the word banzai when charging with the samurai swords. Now, politicians are naturally the whipping boy, yet national sensibilities impose some checks. You remember a few years back, a British Chancellor of Exchequer presented a budget and he was portrayed as a commode, as a toilet piece. He was shown as something where the human waste is presented. In India, such a thing would never have happened. You couldn't even think of representing the finance minister as a commode. But then it's okay. Now, let's not forget that the good societies like Canadians are reverential, unlike some societies where near free speech is near absolute. Look at the controversial Danish cartoons that created tension in the Muslim world and the Europe. But then, if the teacher had not shown, these cartoons are easily available on the web. Students can see it. So teacher didn't do something which was horrible. Let's be clear, it's very difficult to define the limits of offensiveness, even when it does not involve the religion. We may not be admirers of Turkey's Erdogan and his grandiose project of recreating a version of Ottoman Empire. Indeed, his offensive diplomacy on the issue that doesn't concern him is extremely offensive by itself. Yet the Charlie Hebdo cover portraying him as a drunk lecher was not in a very good taste. So I call it a tasteless cartoon. But that doesn't mean that the cartoon should be killed. Maybe Hadbo was equating style with shock. So the political culture has elevated, of France especially, has elevated the very clearly the concept of free speech fundamentalism into dogma. Well, that's their culture. And you have no right to ask a country to change its culture to suit the interests of the others. The ideas of France center on inalienable right to offend. In India and in Canada, this might seem to be extreme, but it's a French republican tradition dating to the 18th century. So, as a matter of fact, it should have been taken with a grain of salt or accepted. And the criticism, if any, should have been that of the murderers. Most important is a question of law. Does anybody have the right to take the law in his own hands and suddenly kill the people who are viewed as offensive? Well, if they are offensive, prosecute them, jail them. But you can't kill them. Do the national laws of a country be subordinated to theological prescriptions? That's not possible today and must not happen. Should a country choose not to act against the terror attacks on its citizens, which France is doing? Absolutely. France has the right to do it. So these are the questions that are not only confined to France. They cross the boundary, the geographical boundary of France. The Islamic countries may feel that the President Macron is prejudiced against Islam, but he's not. They're entitled, but then the Islamic countries are entitled to the protest, raise the issue in international fora, and even if they want, boycott French goods. But a policy of trying to foment civil unrest, encourage terrorism, is absolutely unacceptable, and I fully support India's standing by with the French president because the issue is definitely more than tasteless cartoon. It contains and enshrines my right to offend as long as I do not cross the Rubicon, and that nobody can take it from any individual. Thank you.